Hello, YouTube coin collectors and stackers. Today I'm going to be discussing why you should never, ever get involved with Mercury Dimes for any reason whatsoever. Because if you do, it's going to be a rabbit hole that you're going to go down forever. So if you've seen my video on Morgan dollars, you already get the punchline on this. Before I get into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who takes the extra second or two to do that. So Mercury Dimes. You know, when we talk about junk 90, a lot of people think about Mercury Dimes. And, you know, you can always do junk 90 with Roosevelt dimes, but Mercury Dimes, people always say, well, they're identifiable. They have their own unique look. And, you know, people know that these are 90% silver. You know, Roosevelt dimes, you got to, look at the date to know they're 90% silver. But with Mercury Dimes, they're always 90% silver. And so I started out in my junk 90 days just digging through Mercury Dime bins, really just trying to fill up my Mercury Dime books and stack and wait, like many of us do. But then I fell in love with the design. And like with the Morgan dollars, I went way down the Mercury Dime rabbit hole. So let's talk about some of the things that happened to me. Well, this happened to me. I'm going to try to keep it out of the light. But I managed to put together a pretty nice set of Mercury Dimes. That 16D is a little bit of a beater, but I'll show you one that's gorgeous in a moment. We'll talk about the 16D. I have a couple of those holdered and why you always want to get them holdered. But I got some just beautiful examples. We're not going to touch them all. I'll just sort of let you admire them as we go. And one of the things we'll talk about with Mercury Dimes is some of the designations that make them more valuable, like full bands. But you can see as we go that, these are beautiful coins. The Liberty face you're seeing there was actually was designed. That's a key date right there, the 21. Was Elsie Stevens, or is Elsie Stevens. Elsie Stevens was Adolph Weinman's tenant. She and her husband rented a room from him in the building he owned in New York, and she modeled for him for a bust, and that bust later became the inspiration for the Mercury Dime, as we see here. So, and we're only at 1927. So this series ran from 1916 all the way through World War II in 1945 and was replaced by the Roosevelt dime in 46 to basically honor him after he passed away and his involvement with the March of Dimes. But I won't bore you with all of these right now, but this is where you go. This is the danger. The danger is that you go ahead and put one of these sets together, which I ended up doing over time, and there's some I have to upgrade in there, like some of the key dates. But when we start going through it, we'll start to see like how deep down the rabbit hole you can go. So one of the things I love about Mercury Dimes is if you like Mercury Dimes and you want to get started and you want to start filling up a book, it's easy to do. You go down to your dealer, you start looking through their junk 90 Mercury Dimes, and you can just start picking the dates you need to fill your book. That's kind of how we all get started. Then, you start to maybe get lucky sometimes. Like, I was digging through a Mercury Dime junk bin one day, and I don't know how the heck this got in there, but this is a 1931. This is considered a semi-key date, 1.26 million minted, and I was able to fish this out of a dealer junk 90 bin. It was a little more worse for the wear. I had to do a little conservation on it, but I sent it into PCGS, and it came back gem. MS65. Now, how often is this going to happen to you in a Mercury Dime bin? Well, you probably find some 31Ds, but they're going to be heavily circulated. Even still, they're worth a couple of bucks more than, say, just a regular sort of junk 90 Mercury Dime. But this guy come back, this is a several $100 dime now that I think I paid about $2.70 for at the time. Another one I got back out of a junk 90 bin, hunting around, was this. Again, this looks really nice, and it is. Didn't look this nice in the bin. It was all dusty and dirty. It needed some conservation. I was able to kind of bring up the luster and bring this one back to life. And we can see clearly there we got nice full bands on that guy. And this one came back with an MS64 full bands. So what do I mean by full bands? You want to focus on the fasces there in the middle. And we have these crossbars here. And we'll see, all the way across, kind of like if you're thinking about full bell lines, where the bell lines go all the way across. You want those vertical lines to be clean all the way across. Again, another find in a dealer junk bin. That was kind of cool. Another one, and this is kind of what they look like in the junk bin. More like this guy, this 1919. You can see under there's some pretty nice original luster on this one. And, it's definitely dirty. It's definitely seen better days. But still, I mean, this one came back cleaned unk detail. So at some point along the way, it got cleaned and damaged. But still an uncirculated 1919 Denver, and still worth, probably well over $100 even in that condition. So going down the Mercury Dime kind of rabbit hole, well, let's start looking at some of the key dates. And most of the time you'll see this. It's a 1916 Denver. And I'm going to pull out another coin we're going to look at the same time. So the 1916 Denver, and this is a 1916 Barber Quarter. Why are they next to each other? Well, the 1916 Denver is the key date for the series. And people didn't realize how rare it was until the 1930s when these Waite Raymond albums and these coin boards started to come out, and people were trying to fill up their Mercury Dime boards, and they couldn't find 16Ds. They realized how rare they actually were. 264,000 minted. But why was that? Why did they mint so few of them? Well, it turns out there was a lot of production issues with the Mercury Dime early on. I'll put a link to a video down below where I go into all the details in the history of the Mercury Dime if you're interested in learning about that. But the punchline is that Denver got the dies. They started minting them, and it's believed they only minted dimes for one day, and they got the order from Philadelphia, we need quarters. We need quarters for circulation. And they were having a terrible time striking up the standing Liberty quarter. That's a whole other story for another day. And so Denver got to work making quarters through the end of the year. So this quarter should have never been made. And it's also the reason, like, the 1916 standing Liberty quarter is also a crazy key date with like 50,000 minted, because they had all these production issues with the coins for that year. We'll look at them all in a moment. But this is the quarter that never should have been, the 1916 Denver. And the reason I have this in my set, in my typeset, this specific one, this specific year, is because, and I think that's way nicer than a 63, but that's the nice thing about these old green holders. But I have this in my set because I'm a big fan of Mercury Dimes, and this quarter never should have been. We should have had a lot more dimes made. But if that were the case, then we never would have this rarity, the 16D. Now, what I want to draw your attention to, we're going to zoom in here a little bit, is the D. Again, this is on my other video, I talk about this. But when we're authenticating 16Ds, the position of that D down there at about 7 o'clock is really, really critical in understanding whether you have a real or a fake 16D Mercury Dime. The 16D Mercury Dime is the second most altered coin there is after the SVDB cent. So I talk about this in my other video, so we'll post that below. But there's only 4 die reverses for the 16D, so understanding and kind of memorizing those 4, if you're into Mercury Dimes, really helps you from getting kind of screwed on a phony. But here we have a typical one, which is in an AG3 holder. But still, this is the rabbit hole. This coin right here is like $900 to $1,000 in an AG3. That's the rabbit hole you go down, which is, what happens with all these coins. You get some cheap, you get going, and then you start to get into the expensive ones. So here is a 16D in a good 4. That's, details because it's scratched on the reverse. And we can see the details a lot better on this one here. And we can see the position of the D. Let me see if I can, there we go. See, it's a little higher. It's always facing sort of down. We have all the detail worn off the fasces, but, we basically almost have a full rim on the back. And I bought this coin because the details on it were so much better than the AG3 for my purposes. Another real fun one that kind of gets up there, and even that one was, over $1,000. So is this 1942 over 1. And I want you to really focus on the 2 there. I'll hold it still. And you see 42, and you'll see like there's a line coming up at the beginning of the 2. That's actually a 1, so this is an overdate. And there's 2 of these. There's a Denver and a Philly. The Denver is a lot harder to find. It's a lot harder to spot. It's not quite as clear as this one. But this is another coin that can get quite pricey as well. It was actually discovered in the early 60s is when they found this coin. So it had been in circulation for a while, and someone noticed it. This one's a pretty nice coin. It did get a detail for someone cleaned it at some point along the way. I bought this in the holder this way. But I thought it was pretty darn cool. I wanted to show you this 16D, so I showed you my big capital holder. But here's what's cool about Mercury Dime. So yeah, we have these expensive ones like the 16D, the 42/1, and some of the other ones that are in, the 31D that are in higher grades. This is a gem, full bands, 1916, in this old fatty holder, in this old soap holder here. Look at how pretty that is. And this is a coin, believe it or not, that you can get for around $200. A beautiful full bands first year coin. Now for the Philly, they minted about 22 million, which was a lot for the day and certainly a lot compared to the 16D. But in, the course of modern coinage, 22 million dimes would be considered, a modern key date of the century. And again, you can pick these up for, maybe around $200, which is a really nice find. You start to get into some really nice ones where, here's a 38 that's a full bands coin. And coins like this in a full bands generally don't cost too much. We're talking like $40 maybe for a coin like this. Holdered, graded, holdered, certified. And this isn't a gem, it's a choice, but it's still a nice coin. And I have a whole bunch of these. We won't look at them all, but even some of these, like for $75, here's a 1939 San Francisco. And the San Franciscos through the 30s always have lower mintages, or generally have lower mintages. And that's a 66 coin for like $75. So, how many of these older coins can you buy in like in a 6 holder for, under $100 or $80? And that's what Mercury Dimes really do give you a nice advantage. This is interesting. I'm only showing you this one because it's an older green holder. And look at how they used to do it. It's pretty interesting how they used to do it here with like the ring and the ring and the ring and the ring. Thought that was pretty neat. Another one that I have is, a nice gem one here is this one. And the toning on it's kind of weird and funky, but it's a micro S. So another thing you get into with Mercury Dimes is, you see the little S down here, is there's so many different over mint marks and certainly S's in certain years like 1941, 1942. There's all these S's. The most famous one being the 1945 micro S that we see there. Let's look at the other coins that came out at the same time as the Mercury Dime. So we have this here. This is a nice 1917 Type 1 full head, and it's an AU58, I believe it is. I picked this one up raw, got it certified. Nice coin, and so this coin replaces this coin, but again, because of production issues with this coin, the 1916 is a crazy low mintage, 50,000. And then here's the other coin. This is a 43, but the other coin that came out in 1916, also a key date, is the 16 Walking Liberty half dollar, and this one is a nice 43S. I just wanted to show you those because those all came out that same year. Now, another thing that gets pretty crazy with the Mercury Dimes are the proofs. So we'll start looking at some proof Mercury Dimes. So the proofs have very low mintages. This one's a 1938. You can see how nice it is. There's no cameo. It's got that sort of, nice flashy look across the whole thing. So the 1936, we'll kind of zoom out on this one a little bit. So this is a proof 66. It's a nice coin. The 1936, only 4,100 minted for the proofs. 1937, 57.56. This guy right here, they only made 8,728 of the 1938. So this is kind of the last affordable year. This is a proof 66, a few $100, $300 to $400. But before that, like the 36 and the 37 are crazy, crazy expensive. This one I'd like to upgrade. This is a proof 62, 1939. 1939, they made 9,321 of those proofs. Going up to 1940, now they were knocking on 12,000, and here is another proof 66. I'm trying to get them all in that proof 66 range, although it will be super expensive for the 36 and the 37. Again, Mercury Dimes are a rabbit hole. You got to be really careful. You start stacking them, and next thing you know, you're hooked. And beautiful, beautiful coin here. Moving on to the 1941, also a proof 66. We have this nice CAC proof 6641 with some really beautiful toning on it. It's a really, really pretty coin. They get that look to them from the proof sets. So this one was in the proof set for a while. That's why it has that look. And you'd make a huge mistake if you dip this thing to get that cleaned off, because this is what that mint set toning is what gives this the premium, and probably is why it's in a 6 holder and not a 5 holder. And then last but not least, the last year, and that there's 16,500 of the 41s, and then we have the 42, which is my nicest because it's the most affordable year with 22,329 minted, is this Proof 67 1942. But it doesn't just stop with Mercury Dimes. You know, you start stacking them, you start collecting them, and then you can start to find some really cool things like D over D RPMs, like this one. If you start digging through your dealer junk bins, this 1921 Clash die, you can see that thing coming out of her neck down here. You can see actually the olive branches coming out of her face there, the olive leaves coming out of the back of her neck. This is a very, very rare coin that I was actually lucky enough to, I know I bought this one, but then I noticed the Clash die later. Probably about maybe a year after I bought it, I was looking at it going, that looks funny. Just goes to show you should always look at things twice. We have this nice 1936, which is the DDO, which gets a nice premium out of a dealer junk bin. Another one out of a dealer junk bin, the 45 over mint mark, the D over D. Not really a premium on that one. This one's got a really nice die crack that I like through the one. You can see it right there. See how the one's got that die crack. It starts at U in United. Actually starts in the N, kind of goes up under the T in United all the way back through the one. No premium on that. I just liked it. And then this one is just machine doubling, really strong machine doubling on the 42. So you would think, oh, is it a 42 over 41 or something like that? No, it's just machine doubling. And then the other thing that happened when I got hooked on Mercury Dimes is I, started looking into Barber Dimes, and next thing I know, I'm buying, nice Barber Dimes for my set, like this nice 1901 Barber Dime, very pretty. I think Barber coinage is really nice when it's nice. It's only an MS62, but it's still really pretty coin. And then, really going down the rabbit hole would be like getting proof coinage like this Proof seeded dime from 1886. And the mintage on this is like crazy low. It's like 900 or 800. Under 1,000 of these were made. But as a type coin, these are, they made them for many, many years in a row. Well, let me see here. Well, let's zoom back out. And again, just like with Morgan dollars, Mercury Dimes can be quite the rabbit hole to go down. Yet, I like them because you have affordable options. If you just want to start with the junk 90s stuff, maybe you get lucky and you find some key dates or semi-keys if you know what to look for. Those are your 16D, your 21P, 21D, 31D, and 31S. I found plenty of 31Ds and S's in junk 90, and even a 21 here and there. Never found a 16D. But you'll find a lot of 16S's and P's and older Mercury Dimes to fill your books up. You can get really nice full bands examples that are, gem or choice, uncirculated for, $30, $40, $50 if you want to put together a nice set. And like all of these coins, like Morgan dollars and Peace dollars, the vast majority of them are nicely affordable, and then the last couple tend to get pretty hairy and pricey. Well, if you have questions about Mercury Dimes, leave them in the comments below. I'll post links to my other Mercury Dime videos. As always, thank you for watching, and happy collecting.